The sound hit me like a crack in the dark. Someone laughed, quick and sharp, and for a second I wasn't sure if it came from the gym or from a memory I tried to bury years ago. My hand shook around the cold metal of the treadmill rail, and I felt that sting in my chest, the kind that makes you pretend you didn't hear what you heard. I told myself I came here to change, to finally take control, but the truth was uglier. I was running from something that had been growing inside me, pushing against the silence I'd built to stay safe. And tonight, something inside that silence shifted. A whisper at first. A warning. A memory trying to wake up. My heart raced too fast for the slow jog I was doing, like it knew something I didn't. What if the silence I used to hide behind was breaking on its own? What if the smallest sound and laugh, one breath, could ruin everything? Or save me? And why, after all these years, did that forgotten voice inside me suddenly feel like it wasn't alone? I stayed on the treadmill long after the laugh faded, pretending I didn't feel the burn in my chest, or the heaviness behind my eyes. But the truth kept pressing harder with every breath. Something in me was slipping, and I didn't know how to stop it. I told myself it was just a bad moment, just a sound in a loud room. But that wasn't it. It felt personal, like it had been aimed right at the softest part of me. I stepped off the machine and tried to stretch, tried to look normal, but my hands wouldn't stop shaking. I hated how fast humiliation could work its way under my skin, how one small spark could light everything I tried so hard to bury. As I moved toward the lockers, I caught myself listening for that laugh again, trapped between wanting to run and wanting to understand why it hurt so much. Why did a single sound feel like a reminder of something I'd never dealt with? And why did it feel like the past was getting louder? The walk home felt heavier than the workout. Every streetlight buzzed like it was irritated with me, flickering just enough to make the shadows stretch longer. I tried to drown out the memory of that laugh, but my mind kept replaying it with sharper edges, twisting it into something bigger, something older. I shoved my hands into my pockets and kept my head down as I moved through the empty sidewalk, hoping the cold would numb everything buzzing inside me. But the silence didn't help. It only left space for thoughts I didn't want. Thoughts about how long I'd been shrinking myself, not in size, but in presence. How often I'd chosen to disappear instead of fight back. A passing car splashed water near my feet, and I flinched like someone had called my name. I didn't know why I felt watched, or why the night felt unfamiliar, but something inside me whispered that this wasn't just about weight. Something was waking up, and it wasn't gentle. Back in my apartment, the quiet felt so sharp it almost stung. I dropped my gym bag on the floor and stood there, staring at the wall like it might suddenly give me answers. I kept thinking I needed a plan, something strict, something that would make everything make sense. If I could just control my body, maybe I could control the noise in my head. I sat on the edge of my bed and opened my phone, scrolling through diet plans, routines, transformation videos, one promising a new life if I could just commit. But the more I scrolled, the more I felt that same ache building under my ribs, like I wasn't doing this to get better, like I was doing it to run from something I didn't want to face. A small creak sounded from the hallway, and my heart leaped even though I knew no one was there. The silence pressed in around me again, whispering the same question. What am I really trying to lose? I tried to sleep, but my mind wouldn't settle. Every time I closed my eyes, flashes of old moments pushed through small things I hadn't thought about in years. A slammed door. A quiet dinner table. My father's eyes when he didn't know what to say. I rolled onto my back and stared at the ceiling, listening to the hum of the refrigerator in the next room. My chest felt tight again, and I realized I was holding my breath without meaning to. Why was all of this coming back now? Was it the laugh? The gym? Or was something inside me finally done being quiet? I turned onto my side and held a pillow close, trying to ground myself. But the more I fought the thoughts, the louder they became. I whispered to myself that tomorrow would be different, that I would start fresh, follow a plan, take control. But deep down, a small voice asked a harder question. What if the thing I'm trying to change isn't my body at all? Morning came too fast, pulling me out of a restless sleep and into a strange kind of determination. I didn't feel rested, but I felt charged, like something inside me had flipped a switch during the night. I told myself today would be different. Today I would commit, no excuses, no softness. I opened my fridge and stared at the shelves like they were judging me, as if every carton and bottle knew exactly who I used to be. I grabbed the healthiest things I could find and forced down a strict breakfast, telling myself control was the only way forward. But underneath that push, something darker moved an itch to go harder, to punish my body into silence. I changed quickly, barely noticing the tremble in my fingers. Even the air felt sharper, like the whole world was daring me to try. I wasn't sure if I wanted to get better or disappear, but I knew one thing. Whatever I was doing, it was about more than weight now. The gym felt different today, too bright, too loud, like every sound pushed against my skin. I didn't warm up. I didn't ease in. I went straight to the machines, stacking more weight than usual, trying to lift the heaviness inside my chest as if it were something physical. My breath grew rough, but I ignored it. My arms shook, but I pushed harder. It felt like the only way to drown the thoughts that wouldn't stay quiet. Lily passed by once, maybe twice, watching me with that careful look she gets when she thinks something's wrong. I avoided her eyes. I didn't want help. I wanted control. I wanted to prove to myself that I could force change, even if my body protested. By the time sweat soaked through my hoodie, it wasn't achievement I felt, it was panic. Not the kind that makes you freeze, but the kind that pushes you deeper into the fire. When I stepped outside afterward, the cold air hit me like a slap. My heartbeat felt out of sync, too fast and too slow at the same time. I told myself I'd done well, that pain meant progress, but my thoughts kept sliding into places I didn't want them to go. I walked along the sidewalk with shaky legs, my breath clouding in front of every sound. The traffic, the wind, distant footsteps felt amplified. I tried to convince myself I wasn't spiraling, that this was discipline, not desperation. But a strange humming feeling rose in my body, like I was about to float out of myself. I pressed a palm to my chest to steady it. A passing bus rattled the pavement, and for a moment, I felt like I was watching myself from far away. Something wasn't right, and deep down, I knew it wasn't from pushing too hard today. It was something old catching up. Back home, exhaustion hit me in a wave so strong I had to catch myself on the doorway. My arms were heavy, my legs felt hollow, but my mind kept spinning. I sat on the floor, letting my back press against the wall as my breath trembled out of me. I should have stopped earlier. I knew that. But something in me didn't want to stop. Something felt safer when I kept pushing, like stillness would force me to face whatever was stirring inside. I drank water too fast, coughing as it burned my throat. I hated how weak I felt, how easily my body reminded me that I wasn't in control. The room seemed too quiet again, the kind of quiet that turned every heartbeat into an echo. And as the minutes passed, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was getting closer to a truth I wasn't ready to see. I lay on the couch, staring at the ceiling as my heartbeat slowly steadied, though my thoughts didn't. The edges of the day felt blurred, like I'd moved through everything too fast to understand it. I tried to convince myself that the obsession was discipline, that the fear was just temporary. But another part of me, the part I kept shutting down, knew better. I wasn't chasing health. I was chasing escape. I rubbed my hands over my face and felt a sudden swell of emotion rise in my throat, the kind that comes from nowhere and everywhere at once. I whispered, "Get it together," but my voice cracked. And then, without warning, an old memory flashed, the sound of a door closing, my father's footsteps fading, the feeling that I had done something wrong just by existing. My chest tightened. Maybe this wasn't about the weight at all. Maybe it never had been. I woke up with a strange lightness, not the good kind, more like the world was tilting and I had to catch myself before I slipped off. My stomach twisted, but I told myself it was progress. I pulled on the same gray hoodie, ignoring how loose it felt around my wrists. The mirror across the room caught me off guard. For a moment, I didn't recognize the person staring back. Not because I looked different, but because my eyes did. There was a sharpness there, a tiredness I couldn't explain away. I stood in front of the mirror, longer than I meant to, trying to figure out if I liked what I saw, or if I was scared of it. Maybe both. My hands hovered near my stomach, as if I was checking for proof that all the pain was worth something. But the longer I looked, the more I realized the mirror wasn't showing Kanjit, was showing cracks. Tiny ones, spreading fast. And deep down, I knew something bigger was breaking too. Something inside me I didn't want to look at. By midday, everything felt too loud again. I tried to study, but my eyes kept skipping across the page like the words were slipping away. The walls felt closer than usual, and even the hum of the heater sounded like it was pressing against my ears. I kept replaying the mirror moment, the way my own eyes looked unfamiliar. I forced myself up and paced the room, trying to breathe through the fog, but each breath felt thin, like there wasn't enough air to fill me. I opened the window for fresh air, but cold wind rushed in too fast, sending a shiver through me. I leaned on the sill, feeling dizzy, wondering if this was what progress was supposed to feel like, this strange mix of pride and fear twisting together. A part of me whispered that I was losing more than weight. Another part whispered that maybe losing something was the only way to feel anything at all. I didn't know which part to believe. I went back to the gym, telling myself routine would make everything feel normal again. But the moment I stepped inside, something felt wrong. The lights seemed harsher, the air too tight, like the whole place was holding its breath. I started my workout anyway, pushing hard even though my limbs felt shaky. Lily was there, watching from across the room, her eyes narrowed in a way that made me feel exposed. I didn't want her to see how unsteady I was. I kept going until my vision blurred at the edges and the noises around me began to stretch and fade. I blinked, trying to focus, but the floor felt like it shifted under my feet. My heart thumped too fast, too hard, and suddenly the machines looked warped, like they were leaning toward me. I tried to breathe, but the air thinned. I whispered, "Not here. Not now." But the world was slipping, and then the ground rushed up to meet me. When I came to, everything was blurry. I was on the gym floor, staring up at the ceiling lights that flickered like they were trying to talk to me. For a moment, I couldn't move. I didn't know how much time had passed or who had seen me fall. Then Lily's voice cut through the haze, steady but scared. She kept saying my name, telling me to breathe, telling me to stay with her. I tried to speak, but my throat felt tight, like words were stuck somewhere deep. Shame washed over me so quickly it made me shake. I hated that she saw me like this. I hated that anyone had. A few other people hovered nearby, but Lily kept them back. There was something fierce in her tone, something protective. As my vision cleared, I realized how close I had come to something dangerous, and yet, part of me still wanted to call it discipline. I didn't know what scared me more, the fall, or the fact that I almost didn't care. Lily insisted on walking me outside even when I said I was fine. The cold air felt sharper now, almost metallic in my lungs. She stood beside me, arms crossed, waiting for me to say something real. I avoided her eyes, staring at the pavement instead. She finally asked, softly but firmly, what I was doing to myself. The question hit harder than the fall. I didn't know how to answer because I didn't know where the line was anymore between trying to improve and trying to vanish. The streetlights buzzed overhead, and I felt small under them, like a kid again. I mumbled something about control, about needing to change, but the words sounded thin. Lily didn't argue. She just nodded slowly, like she saw something in me I was desperate to hide. As she turned to leave, The silence between us felt heavy. I wondered if she knew how close I was to slipping. I wondered if I knew. I didn't go to class the next morning. I didn't even try. I stayed in bed, staring at the ceiling as sunlight crawled slowly across the room. My body felt heavy, like every muscle was wrapped in wet sand. But my mind wouldn't stop moving. It kept replaying the fainting, Lily's voice, the questions I refused to answer. The silence inside mutually, my shield felt brittle, now stretched thin. I knew I couldn't keep pretending everything was just about weight. Something had cracked open, and the pieces were too sharp to ignore. By noon, I found myself scrolling through my phone, hovering over a number I'd been avoiding for months. Dr. Celine Ward. I didn't want to call. I didn't want to talk. But a small part of me finally understood that if I didn't, I might lose more than control. I might lose myself. My fingers trembled as I pressed the call button, and for the first time in a long time, the silence didn't protect. Mate pushed me forward. Oral. Dr. Ward's office was warmer than I remembered. Soft colors, gentle lighting, everything arranged to make breathing feel easier. But my chest still felt tight as I sat down. She welcomed me with that calm expression she always had, like nothing I said could shake her. For a moment, I hated her for it. She asked what brought me back, and the question cracked something in me. My throat burned. I tried to speak, but the words tangled. So I talked about the gym, the fall, the feeling that my body and mind were drifting in opposite directions. She listened quietly, nodding but never interrupting. When I finally stopped, she asked a simple question. What were you trying to avoid? I froze. My hands curled into fists. I wanted to say nothing. I wanted to lie, but the truth pressed hard against my ribs, begging to be let out. I whispered, myself? And for the first time, it felt real. As we talked, memories began rising like bubbles from the bottom of deep water slow at first, then faster, almost frantic. I remembered being younger, sitting at the kitchen table while my father paced the hallway in silence. That silence had always been my cue. Don't ask. Don't speak. Don't need anything. I didn't realize how much that habit had grown with me, shaping every corner of my life. Dr. Ward didn't push. She let me unravel the story at my own pace. I talked about the weight I carried long before it ever showed on my body. The fear of being too much. The fear of being not enough. She asked what I felt when I heard that laugh at the gym. I hesitated. Then I answered, like I was right back in that house, invisible, saying it aloud. Hurt in a way that felt strangely free, like naming it loosened the grip it had on me. Dr. Ward asked me to close my eyes and describe the first time I remembered feeling too big, not in size, but in presence. The question felt like a knife sliding between old ribs. I saw myself at 8 or 9, standing in the hallway of our house, hearing my father sigh from the other room, one of those long, tired sighs that told me I should shrink, make myself small, disappear a little. I didn't know then that I'd spend years perfecting that disappearing act. As I spoke, my voice shook. But Dr. Ward didn't look away. She asked what I needed back then. I whispered, someone to see me. The room felt heavier after that. I kept my eyes closed a little longer, afraid to look at her, afraid to look at myself, but there was a strange relief, too. Like a door I'd kept locked for years had finally cracked open, letting in the smallest bit of air. By the time the session ended, I felt drained in a way that was deeper than exhaustion. It was like something old had been pulled out of me, piece by piece. Walking outside, the air felt different, almost softer, though nothing around me had changed. I stood on the sidewalk, letting the breeze touch my face, trying to understand what I had just unraveled. For the first time, I realized how much of my life had been shaped by a silence that wasn't mine to carry. A silence I had inherited, copied, learned to live inside. The weight I was trying so hard to lose wasn't just physical, it was years of shrinking, years of swallowing words, years of pretending I didn't need anything. As I walked home, my steps felt unsteady but lighter, like the ground didn't hold me down the same way. Maybe breaking the silence wasn't the end. Maybe it was the first real beginning. I thought opening up in therapy would make everything easier. But instead, it felt like the ground beneath me went soft. The days after the session were slow and strangely hollow, like my mind needed time to rearrange itself, but didn't know where to begin. I kept telling myself I was fine, that the hard part was behind me, but the truth was that the cracks were spreading faster than I could catch them. I tried to stick to the plan yet clean, move, stay focused, but every routine felt heavier, like my body was resisting me. The nights were the worst. I'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling while old memories flickered like broken film reels, too fast to follow, but too sharp to ignore. I felt stretched thin, pulled between who I used to be and whoever I was becoming. And deep down, I felt something else too, an urge to push myself again, harder this time, like I wanted to prove I still had control. I didn't see how close I was to slipping. I went back to the gym, even though every part of me knew I shouldn't. The lights felt harsher than ever, buzzing like angry insects above my head. I avoided Lily this time, slipping in through the back and heading straight for the treadmills. I told myself I was just going to warm up. Take it slow. Be smart. But the moment my feet hit the belt, something inside me snapped. I pushed the speed higher, higher, until the machine whined under my weight. My breath grew ragged, my vision wavered. But I didn't stop. I didn't want to stop. I wanted to outrun the thoughts in my head, outrun the silence, outrun the fear that maybe I didn't know who I was without this struggle. My legs shook violently. Sweat blurred my vision, and a pounding pressure built behind my eyes. The gym floor swayed. I grabbed the rail, barely steady. A part of me whispered to slow down, but another part whispered back, "Don't you dare." The world tilted so fast I barely had time to react. One moment I was running. The next, everything went silent. My legs buckled, and the treadmill belt ripped against my hoodie. As I stumbled off the side, I crashed to my knees, palms burning against the rubber flooring. My heartbeat hammered like it was trying to break out of my chest. The room spun, colors smearing together. I tried to push myself up, but my arms shook too hard. Panic hit me in a sudden wave, hot, overwhelming, terrifying. I could hear muffled voices, footsteps, someone calling my name, but it all sounded underwater. I curled forward instinctively, gripping my stomach as a cold wash of fear wrapped around me. I pushed too far. I knew it, but the scariest part wasn't the fall, it was the tiny thought that crept in as I hit the ground. Maybe I deserved it. That thought scared me more than anything else. I didn't realize Lily was there until her hands were on my shoulders. She knelt beside me, speaking fast but steady, grounding me with her voice. I tried to push her away, didn't want her to see me like this again, but she didn't move. She kept telling me to breathe, telling me she wasn't going anywhere. Shame pressed against my ribs like a physical weight. Tears I didn't expect burned behind my eyes. I whispered that I was fine, but the words were thin and shaky. She looked at me with this mix of frustration and fear that made my chest ache. She asked why I kept doing this to myself. I didn't have an answer. Or maybe I had too many. The truth was tangled, messy, painful. I felt the gym fade around us, the noise dimming as if the world had stepped back. It was just her and me, and the realization that if I didn't stop now, I might lose more than the weighty might lose the parts of myself I hadn't even found yet. That night, I climbed to the roof of my building. I didn't plan on doing anything dramatic, just needed air. Space. Something bigger than the feeling inside my chest. The city stretched out beneath me, humming with distant lights and soft traffic. I stood near the edge, Not dangerously close, but close enough to feel the height. The wind bit at my face, tugging at my hoodie. Everything inside me felt raw, scraped open. I didn't want to disappear. But I also didn't know how to stay. I closed my eyes and let the night press against me, trying to breathe through the tangled mix of fear, exhaustion, and something else, something that felt like the beginning of honesty. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A message from Lily. "You scared me today. Please don't do this alone." My chest tightened, but in a softer way this time. For the first time in weeks, I felt the smallest, faintest spark of wanting to stay. The morning after the rooftop felt strangely quiet, but not the suffocating kind. More like the world had turned its volume down just enough for me to hear myself again. My body still ached, every muscle sore from days of pushing too hard. But there was something different underneath the pain and awareness, maybe even a softness. I knew I couldn't keep going the way I had been. I wasn't healed, not even close. But something inside me had shifted when I read Lily's message. Someone cared. Someone noticed when I slipped. I sat on the edge of my bed, breathing slowly, letting the weight of that settle into the parts of me that always assumed no one was watching. I didn't know where to start, but I texted Lily back anyway. "Can we talk?" The words felt heavy and light at the same time, a small anchor in the storm. For once, I wasn't trying to disappear. I was trying to stay. Lily met me at a small cafe near campus. I almost turned back twice on the way there, terrified she'd look at me differently. Like I was a burden she didn't sign up for. But when she spotted me, she didn't look angry or disappointed, just relieved. We sat outside, the cold air brushing against our hands as we wrapped them around warm drinks. At first, we didn't talk about the gym, the fall, the rooftop, none of it. We talked about classes, stupid small things, the weather. But slowly the heavier things crept in. I apologized for scaring her. She shook her head and told me she just wanted me to stay alive, and the honesty in her voice hit deeper than I expected. I admitted I didn't know how to balance wanting to change with wanting to survive. She told me she'd help, not by fixing me, but by staying close while I tried. For the first time, I believed I didn't have to do this completely alone. I went back to the gym, but this time, it felt different. I wasn't there to punish myself. I wasn't there to outrun anything. I started slow, almost painfully slow, but it felt right. I focused on breathing, on listening to my body instead of fighting it. Lily stayed nearby but didn't hover, giving me space while still being close enough to steady me if I slipped. It was strange, trying to treat myself with something that even resembled kindness. Every movement felt unfamiliar, like relearning a language I'd forgot. The echoes of old habits tugged at me, whispering that I should push harder, do more, shrink faster. But I ignored them. Today wasn't about shrinking. It was about staying present. When I finished, sweat clinging to my skin, I didn't feel broken. I felt here. And for the first time in a long time, that was enough. That night, I found myself sitting with my father's number on my phone. I didn't call him, he wasn't ready for that. But I stared at it for a long time. I kept thinking about the silence between us, the years of unspoken things, the distance neither of us dared to break. Part of me still blamed him for the way I learned to disappear. Part of me missed him too. I wondered if he ever thought about the kid who used to tiptoe around the house to avoid his size. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. But the ache inside me wasn't as sharp tonight. It felt more like a wound finally being cleaned. I didn't need to fix everything at once. I just needed to start acknowledging it. I locked my phone, set it aside, and breathed. For the first time, it didn't feel like inhaling broken glass. It felt like space, small, shaky, precious space. I ended the day sitting on a bench outside my building, watching the sky shift from pale blue to deep orange. I felt worn out, but not the painful kinmore, like the exhaustion that comes after finally telling the truth. My breath fogged in the cold air, and with every exhale, something inside me unwound a little more. I thought about everything I'd been through: the fall, the rooftop, the confession in therapy, Lily's steady presence. None of it fixed me. None of it erased the years behind me. But it gave me something I hadn't felt in a long time. A sense that I could rebuild. Not from punishment or fear, but from understanding. I watched the last sliver of sun dip below the buildings and felt a small warmth bloom in my chest. I didn't know what tomorrow would look like. But for the first time, I wasn't scared of facing it. I was choosing to stay. The next morning felt different, not perfect. Not clean, but steady. I woke up without the urge to punish myself, without the panic that had chased me for weeks. My body was still sore, my thoughts still messy, but something inside me felt rooted again. I moved slowly, making breakfast without rushing, sitting down without guilt. It felt strange. This gentleness, like trying on clothes that didn't quite feel mine yet, but might someday. I kept thinking about what Dr. Ward said, that healing wasn't about erasing the past, but making space for who I was becoming. And for once, I believed her. I ate at a normal pace, feeling each bite settle into a body I was learning to treat like something worth keeping. When I caught my reflection in the window, I didn't flinch. I didn't shrink. I just breathed. And for the first time, I wondered if maybe losing everything I thought I needed had made room for what I actually did. Later that afternoon, I decided to walk through the park near campus. I hadn't been there in months. The cold air bit gently at my cheeks as I followed the winding path, watching leaves skitter along the ground like small reminders that everything changes, whether we want it to or not. I found a quiet spot under a bare tree and sat down, letting the stillness sink into me. My chest felt open in a way it never had during those weeks of pushing, starving, running. I thought about the weight I'd tried so desperately to lose, the way I had tied my worth to the size of my body. And I saw now that the real heaviness had never been physical. It was the silence, the self-blame, the years of shrinking myself just to feel safe. Sitting there, I felt a slow, warm understanding bloom. Maybe healing wasn't loud or dramatic. Maybe it was this choosing to sit with myself instead of running from my own presence. Oh, when I got home, I finally did something I'd been avoiding for years. I called my father. My hands shook as the phone rang, and for a moment I almost hung up. But then his voice came through older than I remembered, softer somehow. We talked in awkward pieces at first, like two people trying to fit words into a space that had been empty for too long. I didn't tell him everything. Not yet. But I told him enough. That I'd been struggling, that things had gotten scary, that I was trying to get better. He went quiet in the way he always did, but this time it didn't feel like a wall. It felt like he was searching for the right words instead of avoiding them. When he finally spoke, his voice cracked. He said he wished he'd understood more when I was younger, that he didn't mean for his silence to feel like distance. I didn't forgive everything in one moment, but I felt something loosen. Something long held start to breathe again. As the days passed, I realized healing didn't come in one sweeping moment. It came in pieces: slow mornings, steady meals, honest conversations, small steps toward myself. Lily remained close, checking in without smothering me, reminding me that connection didn't have to feel dangerous. I started moving my body in ways that felt kind rather than punishing. Slow walks, light stretching, breaths that didn't end in panic. Each day felt like peeling back a layer I'd hidden behind for years. There were still shadows, still echoes of the silence I'd grown inside, but they didn't own me anymore. I wasn't trying to vanish. I wasn't trying to shrink myself into something easier for the world to hold. I was learning to exist without apology, and with every small act of care, I felt the old weight, the shame, the fear, the self-hate slip further away. What I lost wasn't my body. It was the story that I had to earn the right to take up space. On the last night of winter break, I found myself on the rooftop again, not to escape, but to acknowledge what brought me here. The city lights shimmered below, steady and bright. I leaned on the railing, breathing slowly, feeling the cold wind slip through my hair. Everything I had lost over these months passed through my mind. The fear, the silence, the obsession, the need to disappear. I didn't mourn losing those things. I mourned how long I carried them. And I realized something. All along, I wasn't trying to lose weight. I was trying to lose the parts of myself that were built on hurt and quiet and pretending. But somewhere along the way, I found pieces I didn't expect: strength in vulnerability, comfort in connection, a voice I thought I'd buried for good. I looked out at the city and whispered, "I'm still here." And for the first time, it felt like a promise instead of a question.